Welcome to Fast Track, brought to you by Aera, the podcast where we help you get into your first home faster. In this episode, we cover off Trump's tariffs and what they could mean for Kiwi first home buyers, the oversupply of properties in the housing market right now, and how understanding the psychology of goal setting can help when buying a home feels out of reach. I'm Cheree Kinnear, joined by Aera founder Derek Handley.
Hello.
How are you going, Derek?
Very good, thanks.
Good. It's been another busy month in the housing market and with news as well. So let's jump into some of the news and what I think's arguably been one of the biggest headlines in the last few weeks, and that's been US President Donald Trump's tariffs. So it's sparked turmoil across global markets and left, I think, a lot of uncertainty for people as well. Do you want to start off by, I guess, just in a nutshell, explaining what they are and what it sort of means?
So I think the Trump tariffs, most people are aware, he's trying to tariff all of the rest of the world on their goods coming into America so he can rebuild and make America great again. The challenge is it's hugely unpredictable. He keeps changing his mind and whiplashing from 125% to actually a pause to let's negotiate. And so I think the biggest thing that's concerning everyone in the world is it's just so uncertain. And it's nothing like anyone's seen in recent living memory or even maybe going back 100 years in terms of the way a president, particularly of America, operates a country which relies on and interacts with so many other countries in the world. So the biggest fear at the moment is just one of uncertainty. People are unclear where he's going to go, and as his personality is so whiplashish, you don't really know what's next, right? Mm-hmm. And that then rattles the markets in a big way in terms of all the stocks and the bonds and everything like that. They don't really know which direction to go. The other thing is the US dollar is weakening in a massive way because people are like, do we even trust this economy in this country anymore, where we used to be able to trust it in a major way?
So what do you think it actually means for us here in terms of the housing market? Like, how does it actually affect the housing market in New Zealand?
I'm not sure if it affects the housing market per se in the short term very much. The major thing from our point of view for first home buyers is obviously one of the most immediate impacts has been the stock market has gone down. So every first home buyer, almost every first home buyer relies on their KiwiSaver. A lot of KiwiSavers would be exposed to global stock markets. So a lot of people might be feeling that their KiwiSaver is down 5% or 10%. And so they might have thought they had, 60,000 and now they've got 57 or 55. And that might mean it's another few months saving or it's waiting this out and seeing what happens. So that's one of the immediate impacts. Another immediate impact, less immediate impact, is what's happening with interest rates on the global level. It's like, okay, what do all these tariffs do with regards to interest rates? And that's less predictable. And that's more of a global scenario, whereas our local scenario is still under pressure to have interest rates falling, right? There's still even calls from journalists and economists in New Zealand that the Reserve Bank hasn't gone far enough. Like the economy in New Zealand is not recovering in the way anyone wants it to. So there are calls for it to be even further reduced, at a more aggressive rate than what the Reserve Bank is currently doing. And that would be regardless of what the tariffs are doing or anything that's going on in the US.
You did mention there the KiwiSaver, and I think, for a lot of first-time buyers, that's quite a scary thing to go and check your KiwiSaver and go, oh my gosh, it's gone down $4,000 or $5,000, or I think especially at a time, if you're at a point where you're at that stage of I could buy a house soon and I'm looking at it quite seriously, and now there's almost like that bit of panic where it's like, oh, now do I have to wait it out, or do I pull it now and try and buy now? Like, what do you say to people who might be stuck in that situation?
I think with often these situations, it's like panicking is the worst strategy. You can't respond reactively after the market's already done its thing, right? In one sense, it's a good time to top up your KiwiSaver as much as possible because the market is on a dip. But either way, you should be waiting it out to figure out, well, what's that effect? How does that affect your timeline? And is there anything you can do in your control to top up the difference? If you were going to buy, let's say in July, and now your KiwiSaver is down 3,000, is there some other way you could find or make or borrow that 3,000 to keep the timeline that you want? If you're further away, then just continue the course, and don't panic, don't shift your plan or anything like that. You've got to wait these things out. And the old adage is, you have to be kind of fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. So when the world is fearful and the markets are plummeting, if you're going to buy a house in 1 or 2 or 3 years, you should be topping up your KiwiSaver as much as possible to take advantage of it rather than trying to switch or sell things.
And we know Aera is all about getting into your first home faster. So when it does come to that, say you were looking in the next couple of months at buying a home, do you think it's important to still looking at that goal and still getting there faster? Or is there any
Well,
is it worth waiting at all?
If you're trying to buy a home in the next few months, you should probably be in the more conservative KiwiSavers anyway, which are mostly cash and or some bonds, which means you're not going to be subject to these market volatilities as much as somebody who might be in a growth fund. So when you're getting closer to the point where you're thinking about buying a home, you probably would go to your KiwiSaver provider and make the switch to a more conservative option so that you're not so worried about it growing. You're just more focused on knowing that it's going to be there. So if it's 50 now and you need it in 4 months, that it's likely to be at least 50, and that's probably the number one thing people should be doing if they're shorter term. If they're longer term, I think staying in the growth options and being in, not being panicked is probably the right thing to do.
Another thing that we've seen in the housing market recently has been the increasing stock of properties on the market. I know I've seen a lot of headlines around this as well. So Trade Me property data shows the number of houses listed for sale on its site at a decade high in February and continued to climb another 6% in March, putting the total stock up 12% compared to the same time last year. What do you think ultimately is behind this?
So I think it's good that it's a year-on-year equivalent because obviously the summer is an interesting time. People like to buy and like to sell houses. So one factor could be that people are more confident that buyers are going to appear, and they therefore feel more confident that they might get the price that they want for the house that they're trying to sell, like an existing home that they own. And so that could be something behind why the increase in stock is there. So it's not... the other explanation could be, which I don't think is the case, is that everyone's panicking, they want to dump their houses. It's more probably like, well, I didn't want to sell it for $950, but it looks like the market might give me $975 or $980 now, and there might be enough buyers at the auction that I might put it on the market. And that's probably one of the key things that's happening. In terms of brand new homes, which is obviously what we focus heavily on, yes, there's a lot around. And, people built a lot during the backside of the last COVID boom and the values and everything like that. And there's a lot of stock available, which means for the first home buyer, there's lots of options. It means you have a lot of power. It means there's a lot of deals on. Developers are offering everything from cash to paying for your furniture to paying for your appliances. So right now is an amazing time to buy from a brand new home perspective because they're competing for you. Whereas in the peak of COVID, they didn't have any time for you at all. So it's, kind of swings and roundabouts. But right now, from a first home buyer's perspective, it's a really, really great perspective because there's lots of options. Yeah.
How long do you think that will last, though? Because I can imagine people get quite comfortable, right? And like, okay, there's lots of options. There's no rush. I can just relax a bit. But as you say, it swings around.
Yeah, I think if you're able to buy a home, there's no reason why you shouldn't be doing it now. Like waiting longer is not going to help you in a sense. Like, so this kind of fear of jumping in is kind of what people are seeing at the moment versus the fear of missing out, which was, peaked during COVID. The option that you have at the moment is amazing, like the different options you have. The interest rates have come down quite a lot. So taking action now versus waiting is far more beneficial. There's nothing to be gained significantly by waiting. The question mark is how long does it last? It always turns before you've even realized, right? Because the people who are at the front of that are the investors. They're the ones who trigger the market to convert before the first home buyers know even what's hit them. And so all of a sudden you're in this environment today where you might have 3 options and it's really easy and it's slow going, and then overnight in 3 months it'll be like those lots that you went and saw on Friday are now under offer on Tuesday. And that's actually starting to happen to some of the people that we're working with at Aera. We take them to something, they like it, and then a week later that's gone. And so that wasn't happening a while ago, and it will happen slowly, and then all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, when it comes to prices, we seem to be at like a reasonably good point right now. But there's a lot of data that's showing that we are heading towards the point that we expected that prices to start going up this year, possibly a little bit later than I think maybe first predicted.
Yeah, definitely. Fair? I mean, everyone thought they would rise last year. But, I think everyone suffered a lot more in New Zealand and in the economy than first thought. Mm-hmm. So the last 3 months, I think we've seen,
I'll give you the figures.
Yeah.
So CoreLogic's latest data shows that property values lifted 0.5% in March, but that is the biggest increase since January last year. So if you look at the kind of 3 major cities, Wellington's prices were up 0.3%, Auckland 0.6%, and Christchurch by 0.8%.
Yeah, and that's off the back of February and January going up half a percent or something. So it's turning the corner in a sense, and those numbers are kind of indicating that the growth rate is maybe 3, 4, 5, 6%, somewhere in that range. And I think most people are landing on it might be 5% for 2025. So that all makes a massive difference for a first home buyer. You know, a $600,000 house becomes $630,000. Like, it doesn't sound very much when you're talking about those numbers, but on dollar values, it's huge.
Yeah, as soon as you put the dollar value, I think I worked that out recently for myself, and I was like, okay, what is actually a few % difference? And then you're like, oh, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly.
So
the mortgage has to be bigger, your deposit has to be bigger, and those all take, you know, those all factor into everything that you're trying to consider.
In our last episode, we talked about the psychology of goal setting, which I think was a really interesting conversation to get started. And I'm glad we can kind of pick it up again in this episode because you explained the what the hell effect and how when a goal seems really far out of reach, you just kind of go, oh, well, what the hell? I'm not going to bother then with the house. I'll go buy, like you said, the jet ski or the car or something like that. The kind of instant, like, I want something now and I want to feel like I've got this cool thing now. And why it was so important that when we look at goals like buying a house, that we need to be really careful of not falling into that trap of giving up because it seems like this mountain is too hard to kind of conquer this whole thing. So we want to go through, I guess, some tactics and like how we can actually break down a goal as big as owning your first home and how people can kind of approach it in a way that makes it easier to do it step by step and how not to give up too quickly.
The other thing we talked about was if the goals that you've set, for example, a savings goal, ends up being too big and you're not reaching it, then that also being a factor to you giving up, right? Which is different from giving up from the whole thing entirely because you don't think it's possible. Like, say you want to save $20,000 a year and then you start only saving on average $10,000 as a run rate, then you start giving up because you're, you know, out of touch with the goal. I think there's a lot of similar psychology as to what might be happening in the gym. It's like you've got to start with a plan, you know. So if you don't have a plan to believe that it's possible that you could buy a first home, for example, then you will be always forever in the what the hell camp, which is I'm never going to make it. And there doesn't a day go by where we talk to someone at Aera who is in that camp until we kind of present to them the options, right? Which is largely around lowering your expectation, focusing on needs versus wants, being realistic that a first home is not a forever home, and really taking advantage of the loan to value restriction exemption on brand new homes, which means you only need 10% versus 20%. So for a lot of people, it's like, okay, this idea that's $1 million house, which is what the media rules talks about, $200,000, which is 20% deposit, it's impossible, I'll never get there, move on with my life and buy a car and borrow to do it, right? Versus, well, actually, you could buy a house for $600. It might not be the picture you're imagining. You only need 10%, which is what the Reserve Bank says is all right if it's a brand new home. That's $60,000. So that is the first part where you're like, okay, hang on, you're breaking the thought pattern. And then you're like, well, what's the process? What's the strategy for me to get 60? You know, and how do I get there? How many years will it take? And then it becomes much more achievable. So the strategy is a key piece of avoiding kind of the what the hell piece. What the hell outcome. In terms of like falling off the savings wagon, we've kind of got 2 or 3 ideas here. One is having a range of goals. So research has shown that if you have a range, like good, better, best, because we all have bad months, bad weeks, we have a blowout, something happened, the car needs to be fixed. You can't always be at the top, right? So if you give yourself some kind of compassion and say, well, actually, I'm trying to go for the best. Here's my best. It's $1,000 a month, but good would be 700 and, you know, better would be 8. And then you kind of give yourself some leeway. That's one way to not be kind of pushed off the ledge of like, oh, this sucks, it's not working. Another one in terms of specifically for what we're thinking about is automating as much as possible. So if you say you're going to save $200 a week, automate it out of your account.
Like set up the transfer on your account.
Into another account.
Yeah.
So you set up another account somewhere else, which is why we have these accounts at Aera. But there's anywhere you could do it. You could do it at another bank. You could do it at your own bank, but not have that available by your debit card or your Visa card. And so it becomes invisible. So if you automate your saving, research has shown that will increase your chances of hitting that goal by 80%. So that's a massive one because it just moves out of your point of view and you don't see it. So those are a couple of things that can really help people figure out how to keep on the savings track, but also reverse engineer how to not feel like this is impossible.
I don't want to like turn this into a bit woo-woo, but I'm a massive goal setter and I love, I've just always been someone that's always had like a vision of what do I want to achieve and put the goals down and how to get there and things. But a big element that I personally have always used a lot and stuff is that sort of visualization and actually seeing the goal and visualizing yourself getting there and sort of picturing how it's going to play out and really focusing on that. Is that something that can make a big difference in this case too?
There's a lot of research on that as well. So visualizing your progress, not how far away you are, but more like the goals that you are winning and the progress that you're making towards the goal has a hugely positive effect. And the visualization of what your going for as well. But as you mentioned, celebrating small milestones is also helpful, and giving yourself a pat on the back and those kind of things. There's a lot of evidence around those two that it makes a big difference.
It definitely would, because if you do have a really big goal, and I think last time we spoke a bit about like if you were training for a marathon or something, you know, it seems like this massive thing and you forget about the little milestones along the way, like running your first 5K or 10K or first half or something like that. So just kind of like taking moments to, you know, appreciate that buying a home is a big goal and a really big thing to do in your life. And seeing those sort of smaller milestones, hitting those savings goals and things like that.
Yeah, and if you're at the beginning, it might be as small as just the first 1,000. You know, the first 5, the first 10. Like you can't save 10,000 without saving 100. You know, you have to start somewhere.
Yeah. And starting somewhere, I mean, it's better than giving up completely.
Exactly.
Small goals are still small steps in the right direction.
100%.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for your insight today, Derek. Really appreciate it as always.
Thank you, Cheree.
And thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you liked it, subscribe, or you can follow us on socials at fasttrack_pod. Flick this episode to a friend or a family member too who might be looking for their first home. And we'll catch you next time on Fast Track.